Welcome back. Let's talk about the game of status today. Projecting status is something all intelligent species have done, even more for humans. But what is signaling in the first place? How do you describe signaling? Is it something that emerges from vanity, or is there a deeper meaning to it? Let's evaluate this question. At a most fundamental level, signaling is a communication process. And just for any communication process, there is a sender and a receiver. So sender is the one that is projecting status, receiver is the one that is receiving status and making judgment. And for any kind of communication process with the sender and receiver, they both have to agree to certain common rules for the communication to actually work. Let's understand this from an example, a toy example. Let's say you as a person are are to make a judgment about a person's status based on the clothes uh, that the individual is wearing. And let's say, hypothetically, let's call it like an inexpensive brand and an expensive brand. So let's think about how the human mind would perceive when they see a person like this come across. And just as a constraint, let's say that the judgment on person's status need to be made only and only based on the clothes that they are wearing. So to kind of to unpack this example, right? Um, the thought process would go something like this. Given the person is wearing this brand, inexpensive brand, my belief is that the person is of low status. On the contrary, um, given the person is wearing an expensive brand, my belief is that the person is of high status. So these two statements, they sound very intuitive, but they have like a deeper meaning. And let's take the peel of this onion a little bit more. So what I just described was the receiving process, and the process of making a judgment. In the receiver's mind, they are performing two operations. One, that they are observing the signal, and second, they are making a judgment, and based on the judgment, they are ranking the person. Ranking is an extremely important part of human thought process. We will touch upon that in just a bit, but let's understand the kind of the overall process of observing and making a judgment. So this whole thought process of given a certain observation, my belief is this, is best described by what is called as a Bayes theorem in probability and statistics. Many of you from may remember that from high school or later on. Bayes theorem, again, extremely important mathematical tool that finds application in multiple places. In essence, what it talks about is given a certain observation, what is my belief going to be? In different set of words, Bayes theorem tells you how likely something is now based on your prior belief plus the new evidence that is coming in. How strong or weak that evidence is. Let's get back to the ranking aspect, right, of human mind. So there's an interesting observation that can be made. Let's say there are two societies. One is affluent, rich society. The other is a less than affluent, deprived society. And there is like individual that we pick at random from both these societies. Let's analyze the thought of somebody who is from the less affluent society first. So for this particular individual, you have to understand what is the variety of signal that this individual is exposed to. Let's say for status, for example, Not many, right? So there, for low affluence society, the varieties of signal may be very low. So the belief that is associated with these status signals is usually very high. People tend to have a really strong association of belief with those few status signals, because you have to understand that um, status is a rare commodity in low affluent societies. Very few people have high status, a lot of them have not so high status. And what do you do with a rare commodity? You preserve it, you use it sparingly. So intuitively, people start rationing their regards for high status for only select few. They have like a strong kind of belief on what constitutes a high status and what constitutes a low status, because just because the number of signaling vectors is pretty small. Let's contrast this with the societies where there is relatively more affluence. Here, you will observe that the belief associated with a status signal is not very high, because again, for affluent society, individual in affluent society, there are more relatively more signaling opportunities available. As societies become more affluent, the association of belief with a particular status signal starts to become weak, because now people have more status signals to display. Let's try to understand this from a point of view of an example. Let's say in a low affluent society, less affluent society, uh, a nice car and a house may be a good enough status symbol. But if you contrast that with the high affluence society, um, a car and a house may be a commonplace thing. Now people are expressing their status through uh, fancy vacations, sophisticated tastes, or unique experiences. So, so this kind of contrasts what is considered as a high status at one place loses its meaning in in the other society, and what is considered a high status symbol, um, a status signal in one society doesn't really mean much in the other society. Now that the now that we have established signaling as a communication process, let's quickly turn to the game theoretic aspect of signaling. Now think of it from um, kind of a sender and receiver as a human being. As I have mentioned in my previous video as well, game theory is something that humans are natively very good at, just that we haven't started recognizing it as a skill. So, if you think from a transmitter's point of view, what are the incentives for maximizing their payoff? The incentive for the transmitter is to project a signal that ensures maximum payoff in the future. Whatever that signal is. Let's say, for example of finding a particular mate, the the likeliness of success is for a particular individual when they are projecting uh, good financial status, good physical status, good hereditary, good heritage in a way. um, and let's contrast that with the receiving side, right? The person or the side that has to make the judgment. Their priority is to ensure that their belief, given the signal that they're observing, is very accurate and as close to reality as possible, so that their future payoff is maximized, right? So these two kind of parties, they have like conflicting priorities. Their payoffs are at odds with each other, right? So an individual would be perhaps wearing a transmitter hat sometime, sometimes they will be wearing a receiver hat, all sort of things. So let's try to kind of break down the different roles that an individual can play in a game of status. One role is, should the individual choose to play the game of status, is to act as a transmitter. Um, when they are acting as a transmitter, it's in their best interest to understand the perspective and the sensitivities of the audience, right? Whatever signal they are projecting, it will be only maximally effective if they are attuned to the sensitivities of the audience. Signals that are not attuned to the receiving kind of sensitivities may largely be ignored or may be seen otherwise. The second aspect is the receiving side, right? On the receiving side, the maximum payoff can be ensured by making sure that your biases don't get into the way in making a bad judgment, or establishing a bad belief or incorrect belief that is far removed from the truth. So so person who is on the receiving side or making the judgment, they need to be very cognizant about their own biases and make sure that their biases are not strongly driving the judgment. Actively suppress those biases and use other signals that they are not typically sensitized to make a judgment. Just taking an example, you really like good brand clothes, or you like nice car. um, Make sure that you are suppressing those biases when you are meeting somebody for say dating, and use other signals, other cues to make a judgment about the character. Or these two are not the only roles that you can play. There is a third and more interesting role that you can choose to play. And this role is just being an observer, not actively participating in either the signaling transmitter or as a signaling receiver. Um, this is a very interesting role because now, wearing this hat, you can observe this fine dance between the signal transmitter and the signal receiver. Somebody who is projecting a status and somebody who is receiving the status. Now you can identify what are the things or status signals that a receiving side is sensitized to. Are they sensitized to um, fancy clothes, or are they sensitized to fancy education, or are they sensitized to conversation style? And on the transmitter side, you can observe how the transmitters are projecting their status. Are they in a dating game, and are they projecting status for appropriate for a dating situation, or are they in a sales game, and are they projecting their status through appropriate for a sales man? So this gives like a very interesting perspective on how people project and receive signals. If you observe any quarterly returns call, for a publicly traded company, even that is like a major status and signaling game, so to speak. There is a person, usually the company board or company executives, who are projecting the health of the company through selected sentences, statements, and facts associated with their company. And then on the other side, there is like major institutional investors who are acting as a receiver of these signals, and they are going to make a judgment if they should increase their allocation for the company or decrease. And if you just sit and observe those two parties talk about very specific things, how they are projecting the health of the company and how they are perceiving this health of the company, this kind of improves your understanding of human psychology at a very intuitive level. It helps you understand the strategic games that get played to express opinions and the ability of people to read between the lines. With that said, I will end this video here and will see you in the next one. Thank you.